Hi Markie, thank you so much for joining me today. When I saw your TED Talk, I found your story particularly heart-wrenching, and I'm really curious to kind of hear about your journey and how you ended up in the situation that you did and where you are today. So the first question I have for you is, what was life like growing up?
Wow. Growing up was pretty normal. I had a family of five, you had the puppy. Um, but my parents' dynamic, they didn't have a great relationship, and that really affected me as a child. Um, and so, you know, my mom and I had a strained relationship, and I'd always been seeking her love. Um, because she never really gave me attention. She didn't tell me she loved me. It was this this very bitter relationship as I grew up, and I grew up just starving for attention and being so insecure. And I was that girl that was so shy. Like, I couldn't make a phone call without writing out a script, and I just wanted to be popular. I didn't have many friends at all. Like, no one wanted to be my friend. I wanted to be pretty. I was just that awkward, skinny, shy girl. And family life, it wasn't the happiest for me. My dad and I had an amazing relationship, and we still do. But two sisters growing up, that's that's pretty hard, right?
I think you've really emphasized the importance of having that strong relationship with a mom. And what you've really pointed out is just like how difficult that is for young women when that relationship isn't solid.
It is. I think it's very important when you're growing up and you're trying to find yourself and who you are, and a mother's love, that's kind of like that's the foundation of your life. So when you don't have that, you're like, who am I? Am I lovable? Where do I find that? Why am I not good enough? And so I had all these questions, and it caused me to go in different directions in my life that, and I'm not blaming it on
Yeah.
that, but I know the trajectory of my life would have been substantially different if I had that like warmth at home.
Yeah. That you wouldn't have been kind of seeking that externally so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what was teenage years like for you?
The worst years of my life. High school was very hard for me. So I was very shy. I didn't have friends. And so it was kind of one of those things where I would go to school, and then at lunch I would join like a math class. So just so no one would see me alone and I wouldn't feel so alone.
Yeah.
But as I started, I started growing into some looks, and I would start getting noticed by boys. And
That
that
must have been
was
quite rewarding for you to kind of all of a sudden realize, oh, I'm getting some attention.
I grasped on that and I ran with it. So I just basically would do anything to please anybody at that point. So my I started to get some friends, and they would get high all the time and skip class. So I was like, I'm going to get high all the time and skip class because I finally have people that want to be around me. So I started making really bad decisions and hanging out with the wrong crowd, and uh, started to party. And oh yeah, it was bad. It wasn't me, but I loved the attention.
What did you need most at that point in your life?
I needed someone to tell me that, or make me feel like I was beautiful, and someone that was cool. Those were like
Yeah.
the two things. And I think to this day, I mean, it's still great to to feel beautiful and cool, but
Yeah, yeah.
that's what I needed, and I'd do anything to get that.
Yeah. And I guess that's not going to have come in the form of like someone who studies really hard and like is like really responsible. It's like it's not going to be the good kid who you were going to be drawn to at that point. That's not who's going to make you feel worthy.
Right. And I didn't speak a lot. Like I was that awkward kid that would be around and have nothing to say. And when I did, it was so awkward. So people just didn't like being around me.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That must be, is it painful for you to look back on those years?
it is. I think it's sad. I feel bad for her.
Yeah,
I just look and I'm like, oh my goodness, it was so precious. And it's like, I was lying in bed last night and I was thinking, if I knew what I know now, oh my goodness, things would be so different.
yeah,
But you know, you live and you learn. And I am me now, so it's great, but
yeah.
it's kind of sad.
I like that compassion that you have for your young self. Like it's kind of a motherly love that you have, and you go like, if only I could like wrap that girl up in cotton wool and show her the way and give her some wisdom, that like things would have been different.
Oh yeah, and I haven't always felt that way. I feel like it's taken me, forgiving myself because I used to look at that girl and think, how dumb are you?
Yeah.
And like how embarrassing and how sad is that? And now I can look at it, look at myself and think, wow, like it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. So what happened for you? So you were 19. Tell me about that time in your life.
Yeah, so I was 19 and I was working at a bar, and a fellow waitress just became friends with me. Like automatically, she was like, "Oh, you're so pretty," like, and would compliment me, right? So it's an in, and she was really cool. She had designer clothes, a nice car, and so I kind of clung on to that. And she was trying to be my friend, like text me all the time. Every time I was at work, we would be the ones hanging out, and she simply invited me up to her place, which is about 45 minutes away from my house. And she's like, come to my birthday party. I go to the hottest parties, you'd fit right in. I grew up with Drake, and she had all this things that kind of lured me in, and I was like, done. So she she was like, I will pick you up from your house, and you can come party with us. You don't need to pay for anything. Bottle service is paid for. We got the taxi, we got it, we have everything. So just show up, come have fun. So I was eagerly awaiting that night, and I went up and we partied. And I have to say, it was very awkward for me because her friend group wasn't who I was used to hanging around. They were kind of more like thuggish. They were more like they're badass and very intimidating. She was the type of person that was like, "You're not drinking vodka. You're drinking Hennessy, and you're gonna have this cigarette and you're gonna smoke this blunt." But I was like, "Okay, because I'm gonna be cool and I look cool." And so we partied the next morning. We woke up, got in the car. I packed, my things back up thinking that she was going to drive me home. And she actually drove me to a strip club. And while we were in that parking lot, she said, "You owe me the money that I spent on you last night. And you're going to give this money to me by working. And if you don't, I have people that will kill your dad. We know where you live now. I picked you up last night. We know what he's doing right now. And you just owe me 600 bucks."
How did you feel at that point?
I was confused, and I just thought, I'm in deep right now.
Yeah.
I knew it was a lot worse than I thought it was, but I couldn't wrap my head around the whole picture.
Yeah.
So I just, at that point, I knew I couldn't get out. Like, she was already a very intimidating person. Her friends were very intimidating people, and her threatening my dad's life. What kind of friend does that, first of all? And now we're at a strip club, so it just seemed so real to me, and it was real. So I agreed, and I was trying to be her friend. And I was like, I don't know how to dance. Like, what do I do? I'm asking her advice. I'm like, you need to help me here. And so
Wow.
I went in and I I made her the money and she picked me up that night. So I think I spent like 10 hours or something at the club.
What did that
And
feel like for you, having to dance when that had not been something you'd ever done before, or a decision that you had made for yourself?
I was in panic mode the whole time. I was so uncomfortable in what I was wearing. I was wearing next to no clothing. I was on they made me go on the stage, because not every dancer needs to work on stage, but they made me do that. And in the perverts row, the front row there, I knew four of the guys. And so immediately my life flashed before my eyes. My reputation was destroyed. I was I can't describe the humiliation. And I I accepted it in that moment. I said, "Okay, this is what I have to accept and deal with." And the only solution that I had at that time was, let's find some drugs and let's find some alcohol because I need to forget all of this.
Did you feel like you went into survival mode at that point to get through the situation?
Yes, you can't do it any other way. I was in survival mode the whole time I was under her grasp.
Yeah.
Like that day at the club, what was getting me through was, this is over soon. Let's just make $600. I have to hustle. I have to, seduce these men and get this money. And so when I made that money and she was coming to pick me up from the club that night, I was like, yes, it's over. I'm not in my own city. Maybe not too many people will know about this. I can deny it. And so I thought I was kind of saved in that moment. I was like, okay, I got into a bad situation, but it's done now. And then she collected the money and drove me back to her place. And I was stuck because now I'm with her. And it just repeated day in and day out. It followed the same pattern.
Did you ask to go home at that point, or were you too scared to ask to be allowed to leave the situation?
I was too scared. I think I probably said something like, "Oh, where are we going?" And she just, nothing. No response, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't answer me. It was very cold,
Yeah.
soulless. And so I just kind of, okay, and I would just do what she said.
Wow. What was life like for you then when you went back to her place and you were there? Was it a year that you were there for?
I was there for under a year. So I was there for, time is so foggy, but around 6 months. And I I actually got another pimp um, by accident. Um, how did that come about? I escaped her and I started dating this guy, and he made me work at a club and he took all my money and he pimped me out for the remainder of the year. So I think he did another like 6, 7 months. He pimped me out. But it was very confusing because I didn't know what a pimp was. I didn't know that he was pimping me out. I just thought, oh, I'm a stripper now. I have a bad roommate. I just have some friends that don't obey the law. And then I leave her after months of that. And I think I'm in a good situation because now I have a loving boyfriend and he doesn't care if I dance. And
So to leave that situation, you kind of had to get a boyfriend because you needed to sort of latch on to something else again, kind of for your own survival.
I did, because the thought of going back and living with my dad, I would have to face that. And I couldn't face it. I couldn't look him in the eye and tell him what I had done. I grew up Christian. He believed that I was saving myself till marriage. So knowing that I actually worked at a strip club, I just put that aside. And I started dating this guy, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to get on my feet with this man. And then he was like, nope, you're working. You have to pay for my mortgage if you're going to live here. And so that's how it all kind of started.
Wow. So you left one situation and then ended up in a very similar situation again.
I did, yeah, because I didn't learn. I didn't know what it was. So if you can't identify something, how are you supposed to fix something?
Yeah.
Right. So they were two very different situations. I had a girlfriend that I thought, and now I have a girl or a boyfriend. And so it felt different, but looking back, I just see all of the similarities and it's insane.
Yeah. So what was that relationship like? And at what point did you realize, oh, he's going to pimp me out as well?
So that relationship he was double my age. So he was like 42, something like that. And a drug addict. But he owned some businesses. So he was well established in my city. He was very well connected. He owned a beautiful home. And so I just thought it was, a step up. I was moving in the right direction because now I'm with a successful man. And but really he was just abusive. And he said, "You already know how to dance. I know the owners of the strip club. All you have to do is work, pay for my mortgage and some other bills, and you'll do your part. We'll get you into university and you can be whoever you want to be." Because I would always say, I want to go to university, I want to be successful. And so both pimps would dangle that in front of me and say, if you just make a little bit more money, you can go to university and we can pay for university up front and we can do this and we can start our own business. And they would paint this lifestyle that I told them I wanted, and they painted it for me. If you work, you can have all of these things. And so I'd work harder and I'd make more money. And they just knew obviously that tactic worked. But then eventually, the strip club owner was actually trained in spotting human trafficking. And so he called the cops. And the police came to the strip club, asked me questions. And
What was that like for you when they started asking you questions? What was your gut instinct to go with at that point? Did you feel that you were in trouble?
yeah, because pimps make you believe that the cops are bad people. And, but initially, actually, for a while, I was rolling my eyes. I was thinking, why are you questioning me? Because the narrative in my mind was, I'm a stripper and I have a relationship. And so
And I'm going to go
I
to university with the money that's being earned here.
yeah, so I'm doing good, and I didn't think that I was being taken advantage of. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't admit it. And so I didn't think there was a crime. I didn't, so I just thought these guys are wasting their time. I don't know what they're trying to get at. I couldn't get that. So I answered the questions. The gentleman was so lovely. And then they said, you would really benefit going to a safe house. And
What did those words mean to you at that point when you were trying to piece together all this information? Because for you, it was like they're trying to get me to admit my lifestyle. They're trying to get me to kind of be on their side. They're trying to take me away from the life as I know it.
yeah, I just thought I had mixed feelings of, am I in a bad position right now? And they've got it all wrong. They're going to understand that they're wasting their time. So a safe house, it seemed really intense. I just thought, okay, you guys are coming on a little too strong.
Because you didn't feel
But
like you weren't safe.
exactly. I mean, I was scared that the previous pimps, like the girl and the other line of pimps, were going to kill me.
Yeah.
But I also was in a different city. I was in a different location, and I wasn't scared of the other, like the guy pimp.
Were you getting beaten up by him? Were you like what was your situation like with him? How poorly did he treat you?
It was mostly verbally abusive and sexually abusive. So
Did
it's
you
like if you don't,
recognize that as abuse at the time?
I knew it hurt. I knew I was in a lot of emotional pain from it. But I just thought it was normal. I just thought this is how people treat people. This is just, he cares about me and that's why he's so passionate, and my roommate cares about me and that's why she's so hard on me. And I really just thought if he cares enough to treat me like this and to use all of his anger and emotions on me, then I must be worthy. It's so twisted.
Yeah, well explained though, and because at that point you weren't in so much pain that you were desperate to leave. You were just, I guess, feeling like you were having choice in the matter and that you were living the life that you were choosing to live.
Yes. Yes. Totally. And I was still stuck because there was younger me that I was like, I grew up Christian. I know this isn't right. This doesn't feel right in my soul. I'm not comfortable. These aren't good people. When you're in the strip club, you're around married men who are cheating on their wives. You're around drug addicts. You're around drug dealers. You're around abusive people and people that just want you for your body and don't respect women at all, and you're around people that are getting married tomorrow that want to have sex with you. And you see this part of society, and that's the only part of society that you're seeing. So you think society as a whole are these people. So you just think, no one's good. This is it for me. So you kind of just get yourself into that lifestyle, and that's who you are now.
I think you've explained that really well, that your judgment was so clouded because that was your whole world. Like in that strip club, that was life. That was like a
Yes.
whole city in itself. And in the city that you live in, everyone is just not the most kind, empathic type of person. That like everyone has these agendas and mistreating people is quite a normal thing.
Of course, and that took me years to heal from and learn that there are good people. It took me such a long time to learn that,
Yeah.
but I have, so.
So the police were trying to convince you to go to this safe house. So what happened next?
So after a few days, I went to the safe house, and but they have limited funding, so I was only there for a few days, and I met a girl who had also been pimped out, and her and I connected on another level. Our bond was so strong. When you get to talk to somebody that has been through something that you've been through, it brings you so close. And
Yeah.
so her and I became instant friends, and she needed a place to live. And I said, come live with us because we have a room upstairs. She did, but then after, unimportant information, her and I decided to move out and go out on our own. I'm going to leave this guy, and her and I are now going to work by ourselves together and make the money and keep the money. And
Which sounds like an ideal master plan. This sounds so
oh,
much better than you're going to be independent, earn your own money, and get to keep it. Which, when you
so
were
empowering.
in that situation, it must have seemed like a phenomenal plan.
It seemed amazing, because you're earning all this money, but you don't get to keep it. So
Wow.
now we thought, okay, now we're going to live the life. We now have no self-respect, and we're comfortable in the clubs. We're comfortable doing our thing that way. So let's just run with it. So we did, and we ended up getting a couple sugar daddies, so like long-term client customers. And
Quite opposite from the situation you had been in where men were controlling you. All of a sudden, you kind of get to be in control of the men that you're with.
yeah, and it felt good at the time. It totally did. And
Turn the tables on the situation.
yes. Yeah, and I do you know what? I do believe that that's why so many women who work in the sex trade think, I am empowered. This is my decision. I control Johns. I control this. But it's what comes after when you leave and you can see the situation from a different standpoint and you can understand that all along they were the ones breaking you, and you are broken, and just so many things hurt you. But at the time, it feels like you're on top of the world. You're like, a guy just paid me $1,000 to have sex with me for 5 minutes. Like, I'm sorry. That's, it feels good.
You must have really mastered the art of suppressing all your emotions just to be able to get through those situations.
I did. And I a glass of like a vodka cranberry turned into 20 lines of cocaine really fast.
Yeah.
And it was a nightmare. I'm doing drugs 24/7. I'm high, I'm drunk. I see men as, oh, I'm going to get that guy as a client. That guy's a client. And I just turned into such a bad, sad person.
Yeah, and getting men as clients must have involved a lot of strategy, a lot of manipulation, and your goal was very much in that present moment of just all of these quick wins and getting the money, and not really maybe thinking about how much you were hurting inside.
Right. Yeah, it was all about kind of the chase and, getting money just to spend it on drugs. You're not thinking about the future at all. If I was, I wouldn't be in that position. But you're thinking about instant gratification. And since men, told me that I was beautiful, told me that I was hot, oh, a man is willing to cheat on his wife for me, I must be special. Um, yeah, it was it felt good, and I neglected to feel the feelings of, this person is hurting, and this person is hurting another human being, because now, especially as a married woman, I it makes me sick to my stomach that I played a role in other families' pain.
Did you so you were doing a lot, you were drinking a lot, you were doing a lot of drugs. Did you have moments where you felt you were breaking down emotionally?
A lot of those moments, but that would pass. It's like I would have a mental breakdown, or there was so many moments that I can look back on. Like, there was this moment, I was in a motel, and I just looked at myself in the mirror, and I was like, "Who are you? Like, who have you become?" And that was, oh, I always think about that moment. But then 5 minutes later, a client comes in, and you're back in that, and you're just like, take a shot, do a line, and you're back in it. And, so it was kind of a series of so many of those moments over years, of time, that got to a point where it's like, I can't go back. But it took a very long time and too many breakdowns for that to happen.
What changed for you? Where was the point where you were like, actually, I'm gonna do things different?
I was slowly breaking down over time, but the moment that I was like, I'm gonna try and live a better life, was when that girl, my best friend, I found out she was sleeping with a boyfriend that I had been dating for a year. And we all lived hours and hours away from my hometown, and those were the only people I had. And so I just thought, the two people I thought loved me just betrayed me in the worst way possible. This is obviously not a life that I want to live.
Yeah.
And so, with nothing left, I called my dad and I said, I want to come home. And I came home the next morning. And it was still a journey. I kept a couple clients in my back pocket, for extra money and to pay my way through school. But I was in school, and I got a job at Starbucks, okay, minimum wage.
That must have been
And
so difficult for you to say, well, now I'm going to go and work at Starbucks, when actually you had been in such a different lifestyle where earning money was so much easier than what you would get paid at Starbucks.
it was so hard not being able to live a lifestyle, and even living with a parent. And, I no longer drove a Range Rover. Now I'm taking the bus, and I'm spending about 3 hours a day on the bus to go to school and then to my part-time job. But it felt right. And the people that I met at school and my job, like, I still have those friendships to this day, and they're real friendships. And I think that could see that. I could see that there's a bigger, greater picture
Mm,
than, than just money and
yeah.
things. So,
What was it like going back to your dad and trying to rebuild that relationship after everything that you'd been through?
oh, he made it way easier than it could have been. And I mean, I put him through the ringer, but he welcomed me with open arms and didn't question me. Years ago, he would have done that, but I think he knew he had gone through counseling and, spoke to a million people, and he knew I'm going to have to accept her as she comes. So it was hard to look at him and 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 know that he knew what I had done.
How much did he know about the life that you'd been living?
Mm. The police officer that was working my case and a social worker that had been working with me had a sit down conversation with him. So to this day, I don't know how much, but he does know a lot.
Yeah.
And, and I'm very vocal about it online as well. And he follows me every step of the way. So it's just, he's okay to have the conversations, but I'm still working on that where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
don't
Thank God that social worker stepped in and had those conversations with him so that he knew what danger you were in and that he was able to welcome you back with open arms because you needed to be protected.
Yeah, she did all the right things. It was perfect. She had done that for uh, a lot of people, and she's actually talked to my husband now when we first started dating, and we would have those trust issues, and there'd be there were some really bad times in the beginning of a relationship on my end because I had such trust issues that she would call him and explain, this is why she's feeling this way. This is why she's saying the things and doing the things. And she helped repair our relationship.
Wow.
So
So
she's a
you
great
got
girl.
couples therapy out of it as well. I think that's
Yeah.
really amazing because relationships must have been so difficult for you to form healthy relationships after what you'd experienced.
It was the most difficult thing, I think, as part of the healing process. And to this day, this year, it's so crazy because what was this? I think this was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And this year, I said, I think I'm ready to have a friend again because I had
Wow.
not had any girlfriends. I
Wow.
would push people out of my life. You have those like cordial relationships, but I would never let anyone become my friend and let them in. And this year during quarantine, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to start to build some friendships. And
Wow.
so it's a work in progress,
Yeah.
but I've made
I think
it.
that's amazing. And what's amazing is you managed to trust in relationships before you could trust in friendships. That actually, like a lot of people have difficulties building healthy relationships, but for you, even friendships were such a risky territory because of how much betrayal you've experienced.
Yeah. And because I think it was so layered, it was that, not only the girl that lured me into a trafficking ring, it was the friends that I had had before that cut me off because I was a dirty stripper. And all the
Yeah.
friends that dropped me over the years because of who I had become. And so it was
Yeah.
just a buildup of a lot of different people. So yeah, and I crave love. So love to me, I'm a lover of love. So it was fairly easy to form a romantic relationship over a friendship.
Wow. And that, I mean, that's just to think of that, how much must have been missing from your life and how much of a great friendship you had to offer people and that couldn't even be offered out because it was danger territory for you. So that you must have been really lonely.
Oh yeah, I've been alone for many years. It's pretty sad. Yeah, I've lived pretty alone, but now now it's with my husband. He has an amazing family and he has amazing friends. And I think that's kind of motivated me to want to seek out more friends and realize that I need people more than I think I need people. You know, people aren't in your life to hurt you, and I'm realizing that now as people are in your life to support you and through your journey and be there. And so I'm ready.
And the insight that you have is just remarkable, because obviously there's a lot of women who are still in the situation that you were in without the insight that they need to be able to get out and heal. Did you have a lot of therapy, or how did you start to really be able to heal from what you've been through and also develop the level of insight that you have now?
I have to give the credit to my husband's name is Ryan. So I'm giving the credit to Ryan. I had tried different counselors, different people that didn't quite understand it. And I think now 2020 is kind of a different time because human trafficking has been kind of a hot topic. So people are learning more and more about it. But when I had been trafficked, no one really knew how to deal with it. Is it sexual abuse? Is it emotional? You know, who's the therapist for that? And so none of that worked for me. It was more people wanting to know my story and, ooh, like what happened? And so I wasn't healing and I noticed that. So I went on my own journey of um, digging deep and feeling. And so, you know, you have to feel to heal.
Yeah,
So
and that's hard. That's
I,
painful.
it's so painful. But then I got into a trap where most people get into, and it's they feel it and they replay and they re-traumatize themselves and they're living in the past. And I was doing that, and I fell into a victim mentality. And so I would get praise from people like, "Oh, poor you, you know, you're," and and that's how I was getting further in life, is because now I'm a victim and I can just use that as an excuse to
Yeah.
stay where I'm at. And so when I met Ryan, oh, he is a pure soul.
Where did you
He
meet Ryan?
through one of a coworker, so I was a waitress again, and she said, "I have a friend that would be perfect for you." And so she set us up, and we've been together ever since.
Was it a bit unusual for you, or unfamiliar, or boring, or was there anything unappealing about Ryan initially because he was so different to the chaos that you'd known before?
I love that question. Um, do you know what? Things with him were never boring. I think because he has such great insight, and I think that's where I've been able to develop, you know, opening myself up to learn more. He has so much to him. He has so many layers to him, and even though there was no chaos with like drugs or parties or, you know, I hate you, I love you, there was, he fed my soul. And that to me, that to me is just amazing. And so he taught me, you know, to forgive the people that trafficked me
I
and the
think this is
people.
the most interesting part of your story, is the forgiveness thing. Because the forgiveness thing, like when people get to that level, when they've really been so badly mistreated and like the most horrific things done to them, the power of being able to forgive is just this fascinating thing, because to get there, it's a very unusual place for people to get to. So I find that very interesting. Could you tell me a little bit more about the forgiveness?
Of course, yeah. So, like many people, I thought forgiveness was just like something, you know, last resort, something that, you know, it's been around for so long, and it's like, well, if this is so great, then why are more people doing it? And not many people are doing it. It's because it's hard and
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good in the moment. So
And also,
he
why would you forgive people who've raped you? Why would you forgive people who betrayed you? People who've pimped you out? People who've, like, the stuff that you're forgiving these people for is like, you just instinctively must feel so much anger and hate, and those emotions are so appropriate, and kind of have to be released before you can even go there and entertain this idea of forgiveness.
Oh, totally. I had gone through so many thoughts and I was so angry at these people. But he was convinced that it works. So I was like, sure, I'll try it. And so at the beginning, it was more of and I'm a believer of God, but this can work for anybody who believes in a higher power. But I was just saying, like, God, just let me want to forgive. Like, just let me think about forgiving. And that's how it started.
He sold the idea of forgiveness to you. He sold the idea of like, hey, why don't you just give this a try?
Yeah, because he's like, you need to let it go, right? And everyone, let things go. And the only way you can let it go is if you release them from your grasp, because me hating them and me being angry at them, they're in my mind still. They're having control over the tension in my body. They're having control over my thoughts. And just when you put it like that, I'm like, they're not getting any control over me.
Yeah.
And so
it's also kind of an absurd suggestion, because you can like forgive someone for like, stealing like 10 pounds from you, or like, just something minor, but like to suggest to someone that you love to forgive people for that level of stuff, it's like, it's just slightly, it's just a very interesting suggestion that he came up with.
And at first I was upset with him. So my small mind was like, you obviously don't love me enough to ask me to forgive someone that caused me so much pain. So it felt like it was a jab at me.
Downplaying what you'd been through, perhaps.
Yeah. So, but it's all, love is the answer. Love is the answer for probably everything in this world. And so when you're forgiving, you're loving, and you're loving yourself. And do I love those people? I don't love their actions, but I love people, and I understand what got them there. I can see, like, this girl that trafficked me, she was trafficked herself. She was me. And so how could I ever hold that against her? And those people that trafficked her, I don't know how they grew up. I don't know what caused them to do that to me. So it's not personal. What they did to me, it's not personal at all. That's with them. So I forgive them and I pray for them that they have a better life and heal. Because once they heal, they're going to stop targeting other people,
I
So,
think to be able to look at it in that sense and see the bigger picture, and that they must have been through something so horrific themselves to even take them there, so that they had to treat people in that way, and the pain that they must experience because they've had to do those actions, that like they cannot possibly be having a happy, healthy life, that actually their suffering must be quite phenomenal. But to have that level of empathy for others is really extraordinary. It's hard to like get to that point where you forget about your own suffering and also think about what they must have had to go through.
thank you. I really appreciate that.
How did you get there with the forgiveness? Because you kind of were like, okay, I'll just give it a try. How long did it take you to sort of be there?
It was kind of an on and off process for months. So I, just like anything, you kind of need an accountability buddy. So I said, Ryan, I need you and I to forgive people every day. So we sat down every morning and I had a piece of paper. And first I wrote down a list of all the names, and it was all the Johns, guy in white t-shirt.
Yeah.
And it was pages and pages long.
I can imagine that must have been some list.
It was very long, and I would do one or two a day, and I would just pray and forgive and ask that I want to forgive them, and truly kind of like repeat it, meditate on it, and just like kind of visually let it go. And I'm not saying that you're like, oh, I forgive Peter and you're good. No, it's a process. And sometimes to this day, I still have that ritual. And I have to forgive if feelings of hurt comes up, and it's just a lifelong process. You have to practice forgiveness.
Did you have to
And
feel the anger first and release the anger before you could start the process of forgiveness, or did it happen in a completely different order?
you have to just dive in, because if you are over the anger period, you're you're ready to forgive. But you're never ready to forgive. You can't just wait to be ready. So I think it's you need to dive in. I don't care if this happened yesterday or 20 years ago, but you have to dive right in. And while you do it, emotions that you've never had will pop up, good and bad. And push through it, keep doing it. And it's so rewarding because you get to know yourself. It's like a self discovery thing. And you'll tap into places of your mind and your soul that you've never had before. And I think ultimately it just makes you so much more of a better person.
It must have been a very interesting process for you to push yourself in that direction and kind of realize that you could look at these situations from very different perspectives and feel very different about these really painful situations.
Yes, because, before it's kind of like, think about your childhood and how did this all happen? Or just, people tell you to think about the future, and those tactics, didn't work, or putting a band-aid on your pain. But I think when I started to forgive, I realized that this isn't a band-aid. This is for life. This is something that you can actually release it from your mind forever, and when you do, you create so much more space in your mind for better things, for new things. And so I'm like, I just want to clean out my mind and and get it ready for whatever else is to come. So
I find that very interesting because when people are traumatized, it's just over and over and over, and like they have no space to think about anything else because it is all about trying to make sense of the past and trying to reorder it, and it's really torture for them that they're like dragging along with a ball and chain, and no matter how they try to push it to one side, it just doesn't go. But for you, the forgiveness actually meant you didn't have to think about it anymore.
yeah, because I find a lot of people, when they're thinking about their past, you said they're trying to like reorganize it. They're trying to make sense of it, and
Yeah.
maybe change it in their mind. If they think about it a different way, maybe it was different, or maybe I can heal it, or do something with it. But the past is there, and it's one way. So you need to forget it and move on. And yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
find that
That's
very interesting. Have you had women who've reached out to you who've been in a similar situation to you, or who are still in that situation, and they're reaching out for some help and advice?
I've had so many women. So once I started going public with my story, it was a good feeling, but it was also just heartbreaking to know that there are so many women trapped in this situation. And and I had women reaching out to me that are in different situations, like domestic abuse, or childhood sexual abuse. And I had this community where people want to be seen and they want to be understood. And I think that the more you kind of like let it be known that this happens to people, the more comforted people are and can assess their situation and maybe try and step out of the situation.
Was it a big thing for you to decide that you were going to speak publicly about this?
So for me, it wasn't a decision, it kind of happened. And at first, so I'll tell you what happened is that I would tell my story to like church groups.
Hmm.
People I didn't know. I was asked to do it by a social worker. So it's like people I don't know, old ladies, a group of four of them, I'll never see them again. And I was cool with that.
Yeah,
And
it felt safe. You weren't taking a massive risk.
right. And so I just talked and answered their questions, and that was that. And then I get a call, and it was just It was like a simple interview. I answered the call, and then 4 months later, it was a Flair magazine article. So I don't know if you know Flair
I don't
magazine.
know it.
It's a huge magazine, and uh, thousands and thousands of people read it. It was published all over the internet. Different news streams took it,
Yeah.
and I was forced to kind of face it. And at first, I was angry and I wasn't ready, and I I was sad for a long time. I felt exposed,
Yeah.
but then I realized how great it was. And when I started getting those messages from all the women, I thought, this is a blessing. People need to hear this. And so that pushed me. I was like, I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to keep on talking about it. And I'm not going to feel embarrassed or shame because of it, because I know that all of these other women feel the same way as I do. And I need to be the strength.
Yeah.
So it I was pushed into it, but now I'm very happy that it happened.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting what you've said about friendships and that, like, finding it difficult to let females in, and then you actually ended up being this role model and this woman who's really helped so many women because you were brave enough to tell your story, and you know, as much as it must have made you feel so vulnerable, that actually that's what those women needed, and you were a tremendous friend to them.
Thank you. I love how you put it like that. You know, when you see the full circle like that, it is very fulfilling.
So how long ago was it since you first shared your story?
I think it's been 3 years. 3 years, because that happened while I was dating Ryan. And so
Yeah.
it's been
And
a
then,
short amount of time.
and you did the TED Talk.
I did. Yeah. And that was, do you know what? That was the first time I had told my story on a stage or even kind of spoke about it. So yeah, that was an experience, a good one.
Yeah, that must have been terrifying, but incredibly rewarding afterwards.
It was, oh my goodness. It was so amazing. Honestly, that is something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. I'll never be able to get that feeling back.
What have you taken away from? I mean, you've experienced horrific trauma in your life, and who I'm speaking to is like this positive woman who's empowered other women and really been there for other women in their times of struggling. What's the thing that you've taken away from it that is something that you're like, yeah, at least I'm glad that I've got that out of having to experience such suffering?
Hmm. I think having a deeper understanding of people, in all walks of life has really helped me with, healing, with loving other people. And I think what this world needs is more love. And so now that I've been able to experience so many different kinds of people and types of people, I can, you know, better love people, understand them, empathize with them, and really that's kind of the start of changing the world. And if I can show love to my community, um, in different ways, then I think that's just growing. So I think that's the number one thing that I took from it.
It's so interesting because when you described yourself as a teenager, like your blinkers were on and you couldn't really read other people because you were so caught up in like just wanting to be loved. And then now it's like you have this kind of phenomenal insight and can really read people very well and like see people and see like that they're coming from all different places and all different kind of backstories, and that actually you can look at people and really see them so clearly, whoever those people might be. I kind of feel like you must have grown to this kind of level that like just exceeded perhaps where a lot of people might be, because you've kind of been forced to really get to know what people are like as humans, and there's people who do really bad behaviors and there's people who are incredibly loving. and you kind of have this thing where you respect them all, even if they don't always do the right thing.
Yeah, and I would have never turned into this person if it hadn't been for that crazy experience. I would have probably still been shy and closed-minded, and yeah. So I've gained so much, and I'm actually very truly happy that I went through that.
Yeah, and I think that's an amazing thing to say, and a hard thing for a lot of people to understand, that you can experience all of that and go, yeah, that's actually made me who I am today, and I'm proud of that. I don't regret it. I don't wish for all of those painful experiences to be taken away, because they've helped me grow.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's so empowering. This has been, I do a lot of these interviews, and this has been like one of my favorite stories. The fact that you can, speak about it so openly, and not be in that place of being like traumatized and being like, yeah, I wish it had never happened, and just being like, yeah, that was my experience, and I don't wish for it to be taken away. Actually, it's made me who I am today.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. And I loved the questions that you asked. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
I
being so open. I think what I hope for this interview is that some girls who perhaps are in this situation see it, and are able to maybe get a bit more insight, because they haven't quite realized the situation that they're in. I think also that this could happen to anyone. Any girl who's shy with low self-esteem could be so easily lured astray, just because the only thing they can focus on at that moment is just, please love me. And I think this story has just highlighted how vulnerable young women are if they are not given enough love in their households, if they don't have those really good figures around them to help guide them. Like, this literally could happen to anyone, and it's really our our female teenagers, and well, males as well, but children are so vulnerable, and people can be taken advantage of so easily if they've not been given a really ideal upbringing.
100%. Yeah, and it happens to people that have a great upbringing, right? It just takes that one vulnerable moment,
Of course.
because people in general are vulnerable at different times of every day, right?
Yeah.
And so it takes the one vulnerable moment for a predator to really
Yeah.
take advantage and lean in on what their insecurities are
Yeah.
to take advantage. So, if we're teaching healthy relationships, following our gut instinct, and and just generally knowing boundaries, I think we will be okay.
Yeah.
But kids, teenagers, women, men, they need to know boundaries.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really missing from teenagers' education. That, like, how to trust your gut instinct, so when you're in danger. You just get this like anxiety that washes over, that's telling you get away. But often
Yeah.
people interpret that as, oh, I'm feeling anxious, I'm not feeling right, why can't I feel normal? Rather than them
100%.
realizing that this is like a healthy emotion that's trying to guide them. And yeah, boundaries, and being able to say no. But I think you made a really good point there, that like, it's not just someone with misfortunate upbringing, that like everyone has situations that happen. Teenagers have lots of situations where they can end up feeling not great about themselves for whatever reason, and that's when predators can really take advantage of that.